Samodi Fonsek was the kind of woman who turned heads: charming, mysterious, and unforgettable. Darren Moss was the quiet, dependable man who fell for her. But what began as a passionate love story soon spiraled into obsession, control, and a terrifying game of psychological warfare. By the time Darren realized who Samodi truly was, it was already too late. What followed was a chilling descent into manipulation, surveillance, and a twisted plan so elaborate, it nearly destroyed his life. This isn't just a breakup gone wrong, this is the haunting case of every man's nightmare. Samodi Fonsek was magnetic in every sense of the word. She had an effortless charm that made people lean in when she spoke, eyes that held secrets, and a presence that felt intoxicating. To most, she was the kind of woman men dreamed about: elegant, intelligent, and mysterious. She met Darren Moss on an unusually warm spring afternoon at an art workshop held in a tucked-away community center in downtown Chicago. Darren, a reserved and thoughtful man who preferred logic over spontaneity, had only come to the class at the insistence of a coworker. He wasn't looking for love, but love, or something that looked like it was looking for him. From the moment their eyes met, Samodi seemed interested in everything about him. She asked questions with genuine curiosity, listened intently to his stories, and laughed at all the right times. It wasn't long before Darren found himself pulled into her orbit. By the second week, they were going on dates. By the third, they had stopped seeing other people. Samodi quickly became a part of Darren's routine, waiting outside his office to bring him lunch, leaving handwritten notes in his apartment, even learning how to cook his favorite meals. For someone who had grown used to loneliness, her affection felt like a gift. To his friends, Darren appeared happier than he had been in years. Samodi charmed his coworkers during happy hours, brought thoughtful gifts for his family, and offered emotional support whenever he felt overwhelmed. On the surface, their relationship looked like a modern fairy tale, but beneath the glossy exterior, subtle cracks were forming. At first, it was small things. If Darren didn't respond to a message within a few minutes, Samodi would follow up with dozens more. If he mentioned a female friend or coworker, her tone would tighten, and her face would freeze in a polite but chilling smile. When he expressed a need for space or alone time, she would become unusually emotional, saying she felt unloved or forgotten. Darren, being empathetic, brushed off these signs. He believed her reactions were rooted in passion or past trauma. He rationalized them away, thinking it was normal in intense relationships. Samodi never showed her darker sides in public. Around others, she was sweet, considerate, and composed. It was only when they were alone that her mood would swing with alarming speed. She'd go from affectionate to icy in seconds, then apologize hours later with tears and heartfelt promises to change. Despite the warning signs, their relationship progressed. Darren found himself adjusting his behavior to avoid upsetting her. He stopped attending outings with his friends, spent less time with family, and even reduced hours at work just to keep peace at home. Samodi called it love. She said couples should be each other's world. Darren wanted to believe her. He didn't. Know that this wasn't the beginning of a love story, it was the start of a slow descent into psychological captivity. He was already being isolated, manipulated, and watched. But the true extent of Samodi's obsession hadn't yet revealed itself. That would come later, and when it did, it would unravel Darren's life in ways he never could have imagined. As the relationship moved into its fourth month, the subtle tension that had once been brushed aside started taking up more space in Darren's life. Samodi's affection, once warm and intoxicating, had twisted into something suffocating and calculated. What began as a romantic connection slowly turned into a relentless performance of control. Darren barely noticed the shift at first. It was a gradual slide. She began choosing what he wore, under the pretense of helping him look more stylish. She started organizing his schedule, deciding when he should sleep, wake, and even when he should eat. Small freedoms vanished, replaced with routines and expectations that revolved entirely around her. At first, Darren mistook her actions for deep care. He had never experienced this level of attention before. She said she wanted the best for him, and he wanted to believe her. But things that once made him feel cared for soon felt like chains. Samodi would read his text messages without asking. She would check his email accounts, memorize his passwords, and confront him over comments or interactions that she deemed too friendly or inappropriate, even when they were harmless. Over time, Samodi became increasingly hostile toward anyone who maintained a connection with Darren. His closest friend, Michael, was blocked from calling. When Darren's sister, Alicia, tried to visit, Samodi staged a panic attack and accused her of trying to sabotage their relationship. Darren began making excuses to avoid the people he once relied on. Isolation didn't happen in a single blow. It happened in layers, wrapped in guilt and framed as loyalty. Samodi claimed that Darren didn't need anyone else, that everyone else only wanted to tear them apart. He was emotionally worn down and too drained to argue. Her emotional manipulation was consistent and exhausting. If Darren came home a few minutes late, she would accuse him of seeing someone else. If he didn't immediately answer a call, she'd spiral into fits of crying or rage. There were nights when she would lock herself in the bathroom, threatening to hurt herself if he didn't prove his love by staying with her forever. Each time, Darren gave in, not out of love anymore, but out of fear and emotional exhaustion. Even his sleep wasn't safe. If he turned away from her in bed, she'd wake him, demanding to know if he was losing interest. She'd ask him to prove his devotion with gestures, passwords, or even recordings of his workday to show her he was loyal. Nothing was ever enough. The more he gave, the more she demanded. Samodi had turned his home into a psychological trap. What was once his safe space now felt like a surveillance zone. Mirrors seemed to have eyes. Devices felt bugged. He started having trouble concentrating, forgetting things, even losing weight. His mental health deteriorated rapidly, but he didn't reach out for help. He was too ashamed, too confused, and too entangled. On the outside, everything still looked polished, but behind closed doors, Darren was crumbling and Samodi was only just getting started. By the 7th month of their relationship, Darren's world felt like a stage where every move he made was under a spotlight, an invisible, unblinking gaze that followed him day and night. The stress had taken a toll on his health. He suffered from migraines, his appetite faded, and sleep became a distant memory. But it wasn't until he noticed something strange in the bathroom light fixture that he realized just how far Samodi had gone. The tiny glint of glass didn't belong. Upon closer inspection, it was a miniature camera carefully installed and nearly invisible. Darren's stomach dropped. A wave of cold panic swept over him. He didn't say a word to Samodi that night. Instead, he pretended everything was normal. Once she left the apartment to buy groceries, the next morning, he began a frantic search. In the corner of the living room, nestled behind the television, another camera blinked faintly. Inside a decorative vase on their bookshelf, he found a third. These weren't for decoration or security, these were tools for surveillance. She had been watching him constantly, even in the most private moments. Darren's mind spiraled. He thought back to all the strange coincidences, the way she always knew what he was doing, even when he hadn't told her. The way she seemed to react to things before they even happened. It all made sense now. She hadn't just wanted control, she demanded full dominance over every aspect of his existence. He confronted her later that evening, careful to stay calm. But instead of admitting guilt or showing remorse, Samodi flipped the narrative. She accused him of violating her trust for snooping through the apartment. She claimed the cameras were for their protection, a precaution she took after a fake story about feeling unsafe in the neighborhood. Darren couldn't take it anymore. That night, he packed a bag and left the apartment. He checked into a hotel under a friend's name and turned off his phone. For the first time in months, he could breathe. But the peace was short-lived. 2 days later, he returned to retrieve the rest of his belongings, and what he walked into was nothing short of a horror scene. The apartment had been ransacked. His clothes were shredded, his laptop smashed, the walls spray-painted with hateful words. On the bedroom mirror, in a shade of deep red lipstick, a chilling message was scrawled, "You can't leave me." He called the police, finally willing to break the silence. But when they arrived, the officers labeled it a domestic dispute and treated it as a civil matter. No one was arrested. Samodi showed up outside his office 3 days later, smiling as if nothing had happened, holding a lunch bag like she used to. She was escorted off the premises by building security, but Darren felt completely exposed. He realized there was no rulebook, no help coming fast enough. The law hadn't caught up with the psychological torment he was living through. As she lurked in the background, invisible but present, Darren knew one terrifying truth: escape wasn't going to be easy, and the next chapter of her obsession would be even more dangerous. Just when Darren believed things couldn't get any worse, everything took a turn no one expected. After weeks of tension, surveillance, and emotional torment, Samodi Fonsek suddenly vanished. One cold Tuesday morning, her car was found abandoned on the side of a desolate highway nearly 60 miles outside Chicago. Inside the car, police found her purse on the passenger seat, her phone powered off and tucked into the glove compartment, and a single high-heeled shoe left oddly placed on the driver's seat. There were no visible signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, nothing that pointed clearly to foul play. But her disappearance immediately triggered alarm. Within hours, the story hit local news stations. Headlines framed her as a missing woman with a recent history of emotional distress. Social media exploded with theories, and Darren's name was dragged into every conversation. Rumors swirled. Had he harmed her? Was it a cover-up? Why had he not reported her missing himself? Darren found himself in the middle of a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Police brought him in for questioning, combing through every detail of their relationship. His story, though consistent, was met with skepticism. Investigators dug through his messages, traced his calls, examined the security footage from his apartment building. Though nothing pointed directly to a crime, the pressure mounted on Darren as suspicion grew. Public opinion turned sharply against him. Online, strangers called him a murderer, a monster, a manipulative abuser. Protesters showed up outside his apartment building holding signs demanding justice for Samodi. His employer, unable to handle the controversy, quietly let him go. Friends distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with him. Darren felt utterly alone, his life unraveling piece by piece, all while not knowing if Samodi was dead, hurt, or hiding somewhere watching the chaos unfold. For weeks, there were no leads. Tips came in, but none led anywhere concrete. Investigators searched forests near where her car was found. They brought in dogs, drones, and divers to search nearby lakes. Still, nothing. Samodi seemed to have vanished into thin air. Darren, though no longer an official suspect, remained under intense scrutiny. He moved in with a cousin and avoided public places altogether. The weight of being falsely accused began to take a toll on his mind. He questioned everything, including his own reality. It felt like he was being punished for trying to escape someone dangerous. Then, nearly 5 weeks after her disappearance, a gas station attendant in rural Michigan made a startling report. A woman matching Samodi's description had stopped in late at night to buy snacks and a paper map. She had dyed her hair, wore sunglasses, and paid in cash, but something about her behavior raised suspicion. Surveillance footage confirmed it. It was her. The police acted swiftly, tracing credit card purchases, checking car rental records, and following the paper trail she tried so hard to hide. Finally, they found the place she was hiding, a small cabin in a remote wooded area, rented under a fake identity. And inside that cabin, they uncovered something far more disturbing than just a runaway. The cabin was nestled deep in the Michigan woods, far from any neighbors or main roads. From the outside, it looked abandoned, its windows coated in dust, the porch weathered and creaking. But when authorities entered, they discovered it was anything but empty. Inside, the place was meticulously organized, with food supplies, burner phones, multiple wigs, and several notebooks laid out on a table. Each notebook was filled with lists, plans, and disturbing details. One had a timeline of Darren's daily habits. Another contained potential disguises, and the most chilling one of all outlined a plan titled Final Act. It became clear that Samodi hadn't just run away, she had staged her own disappearance with the intent to ruin Darren's life. Her notes described how she would leave the car in a remote area, plant her belongings to mimic signs of foul play, and disappear without a trace. She wrote about how public sympathy would naturally fall on her, while suspicion would shift entirely to Darren. Her writings detailed how she wanted him to feel trapped, like I was, and how the public backlash would serve as her revenge. She hadn't snapped in a moment of passion. She had crafted this plan over months, possibly even before he tried to leave her. When police arrested her, Samodi didn't resist. In fact, she seemed almost pleased, as though she had been waiting for the finale of her performance. Her mugshot went viral, her face blank and unreadable. During her interrogation, she admitted to everything. There was no remorse, only justification. She said Darren had betrayed her, and she simply wanted him to understand what abandonment felt like. Her statements shocked even seasoned investigators. She viewed her actions not as crimes, but as a form of justice. The trial drew national attention. Prosecutors presented her journals, surveillance footage, and the hidden cameras found in Darren's home. Her manipulation was laid bare for the world to see. Psychological experts were brought in to explain her behavior. Diagnoses ranged from narcissistic personality disorder to obsessive delusional fixation. Some argued that she was deeply disturbed, others that she was dangerously intelligent and calculated. The jury saw the evidence and reached a decision in less than 2 days. Samodi Fonsek was sentenced to 15 years in prison for criminal stalking, falsifying a missing person report, destruction of property, and attempting to obstruct justice. In addition, the judge issued a permanent no-contact order, banning her from ever reaching out to Darren in any form. While she sat in a courtroom full of cameras and reporters,